What's up, everyone? Today there's a Stihl FS90R on here, but this is going to be how to tune a Stihl carburetor for either a weed eater or a hedge trimmer. So they have a variety of these, and this is not going to be for the smaller one out there, but this is going to be for a much larger Stihl. However, the same concept you're going to see here will work on the smaller one over there. However, it's just not going to be exactly the same because I'm going to show you the actual carb. But just know all carbs work the same way. Yours just might look a little different. So let's get started. Suppose we should start with the carb and why we're doing this. So the reason why I'm doing this one is because I replaced it. What are common reasons why you would have to tune your carburetor? One, maybe you moved and your elevation's a lot different. So when that happens, your fuel ratios are going to be a little bit different. It might not run right, so you might have to do it that way. Age, sometimes, or use. Sometimes these can wiggle their way out. It is a vibrating machine, so it can, over time, possibly work its way out of adjustment. Just general wear of the machine could require a small adjustment from time to time. However, let's put a caveat in there. If your carb is in need of replacing the diaphragm or other replaceable parts, tuning is not going to work. How you know that is if you're going to follow these instructions and nothing really works, more likely than not your carb is going to have to be replaced or rebuilt or cleaned, or there could be other problems, but we're going to move forward. So what are we going to do? I guess I want to discuss what it is. This side meets up with the engine. That is going directly to the intake. When that occurs and you operate it, this door opens. That's more fuel, more air, more fuel. Less air, less fuel. Now for these carbs, we have a high and a low. I know it's dirty, but just follow me. Low sometimes will be marked with a L, or it could be just marked with a H on one side, so if you only see one, just know the other one is like that. Rarely you'll see one. If so, then you don't have to worry about the high and low, you're just going to adjust it. Low does exactly what it sounds like. Low speed, idle. That is not to be confused with the idle adjustment. That will control the engine speed. The low can control the engine speed slightly, but we don't want to be, that's not our main way. That is just don't do it. That's the idle speed. So when we do this, you have to let it warm up. If you're doing this on a cold engine, you're going to be just not happy. After you let it warm up for a decent amount of time, 30 seconds, a minute, then you can start tuning. It's going to be a little hard. You're going to watch me do this, which is why I'm showing you, but this is how I end up doing it. I get the low set. So tightening leans it out. Lean means less fuel. How do you know if you need leaning out? If you see a lot of smoke coming from the muffler, then you'll see, blue smoke or whatever come out of the muffler. That's generally a sign of it being lean. However, it's not uncommon for you to, Rich. However, it's not uncommon for that to occur when you first start it up. This is after it's warmed up. So if you're still seeing smoke, it's most likely rich. You can also hear it kind of bog. So tightening leans it out. Now, if it doesn't stay running at all when you let go and doesn't idle, that could very well be too rich of a mixture, but more likely than not, it means it's too lean of a mixture. How do you know? Well, you don't. If it dies, you can look at the spark plug and see if it's wet. If it's wet, it's too rich. If it's dry, it's too lean. That's a good way of doing it. Another way is, for these, generally, you can start with 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 turn. I usually start at 1 1/4, turned out for both. What I mean is, if you tighten it all the way And then once you get to it where it bottoms out, you unscrew it 1 full turn and then 1/4 turn for both. You shouldn't be too rich on that case. You might be a little lean, but even if you are too rich, you're still going to run. For tuning purposes, it's better to be a little rich than it is to be lean. After I get the idle where I like it, where there's no smoke, the engine speed is where I like it. It sounds like it's running good. Now, what does running good sound like? Where it's not excessively vibrating, where it sounds like, it's not having a hard time actually running. You'll understand that once you look at it. If you can tell it's struggling when you adjust the idle, you still need to adjust the idle. Now, after I get that done, the high is on the other side. That is going to control the higher RPMs. Now, what I like to do is I like to get it to a point where it is screaming. What I mean screaming is you will hear the engine speed as fast as it can go. Then I like to richen it until you can audibly hear the engine speed slow down. Not that much, just enough where it's not as high as it was before, and then I just go literally maybe a 30-second of a turn more than that. That's going to ensure it's a little richer, which is better because once it's under a load, it's probably going to need that additional fuel. And then, after I'm done with that, I go back to the idle and I try it again. Now, here's the thing about this. If you had to adjust the idle a decent amount a second time, you're going to have to go back and forth. These will feed off of each other. The low will feed a little bit to the high, and the high can marginally affect the low. Now, there's a couple things to go over on that too. When you rev up, it should be a rather smooth revving. It shouldn't bog when you first push down on the throttle. It should be a relatively smooth ramp up. If it's not, more likely than not, it's not your high that's too lean, it is your low. Bogging in that situation usually means there's too much air and not enough fuel, so you need to richen it up a little bit. I almost always start with the low, and like I said, 16th, 30-second of a turn, then try it again. When you do that, you do have to let it go completely down to a complete idle, and I like to let it sit there for a second or two. That way everything is running at full idle. There's no excess speed, there's no momentum carrying around. It's legit just idling. Then I try it again. So that's what you're going to see me do. Now, there are two big things that I want to go over that a lot of people don't seem to mention about these. I'm sure everyone has heard that gas engines or engines in general are just basically glorified air pumps, and they're right. However, when you're tuning, if you are tuning an engine that has obstruction, Stihls are notorious for clogged spark arresters, not so much the filters, but spark arresters. It can be clogged from either end, so you want to make sure both ends are clean. That means a new air filter or cleaned air filter, or verify it's clean. And you look at the spark arrestor. If you don't know what that is, watch a previous video of mine on the Stihl spark arrestor. They're pretty much all the same. They're just a little screen that gets plugged up with carbon. I show you how to clean it. So both ends have to be clean. If you don't, no amount of tuning is going to be going to fix your problem. No amount of tuning is going to ever work correctly. So you need to have good clean spark arrestor. I would even wager to say you should take the muffler off and look at the exhaust port. Stihls, not too often. Others, not too often. But if you have a brand new carb or freshly cleaned carb and a new air filter and the spark arrestor is clean, the port itself can also be plugged. So if you're doing all these steps and you're still having a problem, check that. That could be a likely culprit. Last thing is, you see that head over there? It's full. That's important. You need to have a load on there. You can't do this effectively with a empty head. Full head. The line needs to be approximately where it would be normally running. So when you do this, you want to make sure everything's full and exactly how you would want to use it when you first get it. So full head, the appropriate string. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and get this done. One final piece is every part of this is a little bit different. Aftermarket carbs especially will have their own tuning screwdriver or driver. The aftermarket one I'm using has a hex, so you get these little adjustment drivers. Normal Stihls you can usually just do with a flathead, or they do have a Phillips. Like this one itself does have a Phillips. You just clean it out and adjust it with a Phillips. So look at the type you have. If yours is aftermarket like this one is, then get the appropriate adjustment tool. If yours is stock, then just grab a relatively small Phillips. Two other things. One, you should have good fuel. Well, I mean good. I don't mean like you think it's good. No, you know it's good. You went to the gas station, you have a thing of 2-cycle mix that you bought at your local area, pre-mixed for yourself not that long ago, whatever. Good fuel. In addition to that, you do want to check out the plug. Basically, it should be a well-maintained machine. So well-maintained machine is going to be the best one you're going to want to tune. This is the plug that came out of it. That's not going to tune. We throw that one away. And then finally, you're going to want to do this in approximately the time of year, ideally, that you would be normally using it. So let's say you don't use your FS90 in the middle of a snowstorm when it's super cold outside. You use it in the spring and summer. So try to do it when it's generally warmer outside. It doesn't have to be exactly, obviously, but the temperature, it will play a little bit of a difference in here. Not a whole lot, but just for good practice, do it the same time of year that you'd be using it. Searching equipment, that's hard. Leaf blowers, I use it fall, spring, summer. Okay. This should be semi-warm, but I'm still going to let it warm up a little bit. Hopefully you can hear me. Let me do the idle or the low. Pretty good. Too fast. That's pretty good. you go. I think that's pretty good. So from what I remember, the idle was a little lean. There was no smoke. Lean can also run fast. So if it's running really, really fast and you know your idle set should be relatively right, you can lean it, richen it up, and it should go back. Another common thing to look for with the lean and the idle is going to be, it takes a really long time for it to go back to a true idle. It shouldn't take that long. You let go, it should get down there pretty fast. You also noticed, I said before, that usually when you rev up and it kind of bogs, it's a low. Mine was actually on the high end. That can happen, but I made sure that my idle was good before I did anything, and it was. So I did have a little bit of a lean high adjustment, so I richened it up a little bit, and as you saw, it smoothed out pretty decently. Other than that, you should be set. Couple other things just to kind of keep an eye out is you should always have everything primed. If you're going to be doing this and your carb isn't full of fuel, it's never going to run right. Like I said, it needs to be warmed up. And other than that, it's pretty simple. Just follow these little rules, and your Stihl, for instance, FS90, the hedge trimmer you may or may not see in the background, that's it. I almost forgot something very important. When you're done, you should test it. Make sure it's good. Test it how you normally would be using it. If it needs a little fine tuning, go right ahead. Do whatever you need to do. Majority of the time, probably be adjusting the high. But other than that, this should be set. So if you have either replaced a carb, freshly cleaned a carb, or moved, or haven't done this in quite some time and might have fallen out of adjustment, this is how you tune up a Stihl weed eater, hedge trimmer, anything like this. Like I said, the carbs can be a little different, but the principle is exactly the same. Needs to have a load, needs to be tuned up, clean fuel, warmed up in the right time. You should be set. Pretty easy. Okay, catch you in the next one. Have a good day. Follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. I will see you later, and don't forget to subscribe.